Imagine this. You see through someone's mask. You catch them in a lie. You recognize their manipulation, and suddenly their behavior changes. They know that you know. And this is where the real game begins. Deflection and gaslighting are two of the most powerful psychological tactics used by manipulative individuals when they feel exposed. The moment they realize that someone sees through their lies, instead of taking accountability, they immediately shift gears into damage control. Their primary objective is not to correct their behavior, but to protect their image and control over the situation. When confronted with the truth, they do not deny it outright in a straightforward way. Instead, they twist the facts, alter details, and introduce doubt in subtle yet impactful ways. They make statements that are carefully crafted to make you second-guess your own perceptions. "That never happened," they'll insist. "You're being dramatic. You always misunderstand things." These phrases may seem simple, but when repeated consistently, they erode your confidence in your own memory and judgment. The goal is to create a mental fog where you are no longer certain of what actually happened. The key to gaslighting is repetition. It is not just about one denial or one misleading statement. It is about slowly and consistently reshaping your reality until you start to believe their version of events over your own. They may even pull in other people to reinforce their narrative. They will say things like, "Even they don't remember it that way," or "Everyone else agrees with me." By making you feel like you are the only one who perceives things differently, they isolate you from your own truth. A common tactic is to redirect the focus onto your emotional response rather than the actual facts. Instead of addressing the issue at hand, they accuse you of overreacting. "You're too sensitive," they say. "You always take things the wrong way." This shifts the conversation away from their wrongdoing and onto your supposed emotional instability. Now, instead of them being accountable, you are left defending yourself. The real issue gets buried under the weight of self-doubt. Another method is selective memory. They conveniently forget crucial details that expose their lies, but remember everything that benefits their story. When confronted, they act confused. "I don't remember saying that. Are you sure that's what happened?" The uncertainty they introduce forces you to reevaluate your own memory. In the process, they buy time, making you hesitate long enough for them to regain control over the situation. They also employ exaggeration and misrepresentation. If you catch them in a lie and call them out, they might escalate the situation by accusing you of being irrational or aggressive. "Wow, I can't believe you would think that about me. You're making a big deal out of nothing." They act as if your reaction is the real problem, not their deception. This manipulation serves two purposes. It makes you feel guilty for even bringing up the issue, and it discourages you from questioning them in the future. One of the most dangerous aspects of gaslighting is that it works over time. At first, it may feel like a simple misunderstanding, but after repeated exposure, you begin to question yourself before you even confront them. You hesitate, wondering if you might be wrong, if you're overthinking things, or if you're simply being too sensitive. The more you internalize these doubts, the easier it becomes for them to control the narrative. Before long, they don't even have to gaslight you anymore because you have already started gaslighting yourself. Playing the victim is one of the most manipulative tactics used by people who refuse to take responsibility for their actions. When confronted with their wrongdoings, instead of acknowledging their behavior, they shift the focus onto themselves, making it seem as though they are the ones being hurt or mistreated. This strategy is not just about avoiding blame, it is about gaining sympathy, manipulating emotions, and diverting attention away from their own misconduct. This tactic often begins the moment they realize they are being held accountable. Rather than responding with honesty, they immediately frame themselves as the victim of unfair treatment. They say things like, "I can't believe you would think that about me," or "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" These statements are designed to make you feel guilty for even questioning them. Instead of focusing on their actions, you are now put in a position where you feel obligated to comfort them or explain yourself. The original issue gets lost in the emotional confusion they create. One of the most powerful aspects of playing the victim is how it turns the tables in an argument. If you call them out on their behavior, they will highlight any minor mistake you have ever made in order to shift the focus. "You're not perfect either," they might say. Or "Remember when you did something similar?" This false equivalence makes you feel like you have no right to hold them accountable because, in their mind, everyone is equally guilty. They are not interested in resolving the issue. They are interested in making you doubt whether you have the moral ground to call them out. Another key strategy they use is exaggeration. They will take a small disagreement and blow it out of proportion, acting as if they have been deeply wounded by your actions. They may even cry, withdraw, or act distant to make you feel like you have caused them serious emotional harm. This manipulation is designed to make you back down, feel sorry for them, and ultimately let go of the original issue. The more dramatic their response, the more likely you are to shift your attention from what they did wrong to how they are feeling. Some people take this tactic even further by involving others in their victim narrative. They tell friends, family, or coworkers a one-sided version of events, making it seem as though they were unfairly attacked or misunderstood. By doing this, they gain allies who support their version of the story, creating a situation where you are outnumbered. Suddenly, you are not just dealing with one manipulator, you are dealing with an entire group of people who believe you are the one in the wrong. A particularly dangerous aspect of playing the victim is how it conditions people over time. If you frequently deal with someone who uses this tactic, you may begin to second-guess yourself before even confronting them. You hesitate, wondering if bringing up an issue will only lead to unnecessary drama. You begin to suppress your own concerns just to keep the peace. This is exactly what they want. The more you hesitate, the more control they have over you. Eventually, you find yourself walking on eggshells, avoiding conflict, and questioning whether it is even worth addressing their behavior. Silent retaliation is one of the most deceptive and insidious forms of manipulation. Unlike open confrontation where issues are addressed directly, silent retaliation operates in the shadows. It is the strategy of choice for those who want to hurt, control, or punish someone without making it obvious. Instead of arguing, explaining, or defending themselves, they withdraw, go silent, and engage in subtle forms of sabotage to make you feel unsettled, guilty, or even powerless. The moment they realize you have caught on to their behavior or challenged them, they respond not with an apology or a discussion, but with distance. They ignore messages, avoid eye contact, and act as if you do not exist. This is not just about taking space. It is about making you feel anxious, uncertain, and desperate to fix something you did not even break. The silence is a weapon designed to make you question whether you overreacted or if you were too harsh. It creates an imbalance in the relationship where they hold the emotional power and you are left guessing how to repair the situation. At first, their silence may feel like simple avoidance, but over time, it becomes clear that it is strategic. They are not just ignoring you, they are calculating. They are waiting for you to come to them, to apologize, even when you did nothing wrong, to seek their approval again. The more uncomfortable the silence becomes, the more likely you are to cave in and take responsibility just to end the tension. This is how they maintain control without ever having to explain themselves. Silent retaliation does not always mean cutting off communication. Sometimes they remain present but subtly sabotage you in ways that are difficult to prove. They might withhold important information, delay responses, or exclude you from important discussions or decisions. In professional settings, this could mean conveniently forgetting to invite you to a crucial meeting or subtly undermining your work behind the scenes. In personal relationships, it could be passive-aggressive behavior, such as deliberately showing kindness to others while being cold toward you, making you feel isolated and unwanted. One of the most dangerous aspects of silent retaliation is how it can escalate without clear signs. Because there is no open conflict, there is also no clear resolution. They never admit to wrongdoing, so you never get closure. Instead, they keep you in a state of emotional limbo where you are constantly trying to decode their behavior and fix a problem that they refuse to acknowledge. This can be mentally exhausting, making you more susceptible to their influence over time. Another form of silent retaliation is strategic non-cooperation. They make things harder for you in subtle ways, taking longer than necessary to complete tasks, withholding support when you need it, or giving vague and unhelpful responses when you ask for assistance. This kind of sabotage is hard to call out because it appears passive rather than aggressive. If you confront them, they can easily deny any ill intent, making you seem paranoid or unreasonable. Over time, silent retaliation conditions you to be careful around them, to walk on eggshells, to avoid upsetting them, just to prevent another round of withdrawal or subtle sabotage. It is a slow and quiet way of making you feel powerless, making you question yourself, and ultimately making you easier to control. A smear campaign is one of the most calculated and destructive tactics used by manipulative individuals. When they feel exposed, threatened, or unable to control you directly, they turn to a more covert and insidious method, damaging your reputation by spreading false narratives. Unlike a direct confrontation where both sides have the opportunity to communicate, a smear campaign is carried out behind your back, making it difficult to defend yourself. It is a deliberate effort to alter how others perceive you, often leaving you isolated, discredited, and frustrated. This strategy typically begins subtly. The manipulator does not immediately spread outrageous lies. Instead, they plant small seeds of doubt in people's minds. They may start with offhand comments like, "I'm really worried about them lately," or "they haven't been acting like themselves." These statements do not seem malicious at first, but they create an opening for further misrepresentation. Over time, they escalate their efforts, twisting your words, exaggerating your flaws, and fabricating incidents that never happened. One of the most effective tactics they use is mixing truth with lies. A complete fabrication is easy to disprove, but when they take something real and distort it, it becomes much harder to challenge. They might take an argument you had and frame it in a way that makes you look unreasonable or unstable. If you made a mistake, they magnify it, acting as if it defines your entire character. The more they repeat these twisted versions of events, the more believable they become to those who hear them. Manipulators also understand the power of selective storytelling. They do not tell the full story. Instead, they pick and choose details that support their narrative while omitting anything that would make them look bad. If you confront them about their behavior, they will never mention what led to the conflict. Instead, they portray themselves as the victim and you as the aggressor. "I tried so hard to help them, but they turned on me," they might say. This carefully curated version of events allows them to gain sympathy while damaging your credibility. To make their smear campaign even more effective, they recruit allies. They do this by carefully selecting individuals who are likely to believe them without questioning the full story. Sometimes they target people who already have biases against you or those who are easily influenced. They may tell different versions of the story to different people, creating confusion and ensuring that no one has a complete picture of what really happened. By the time you realize what is happening, the damage has already spread. One of the most frustrating aspects of a smear campaign is that it forces you into a defensive position. The more you try to defend yourself, the guiltier you appear. If you remain silent, people assume the manipulator's version of events is true. If you react emotionally, they use your response as further proof that you are unstable or irrational. This creates a no-win situation where every move you make is used against you. The ultimate goal of a smear campaign is to isolate you. Manipulators know that people are more vulnerable when they feel alone, so they work to cut off your support system. They turn friends, family, or colleagues against you, making it difficult for you to have a voice. As more people buy into their false narrative, you may notice a shift in how others treat you. Some may distance themselves, while others may act differently without explanation. Smear campaigns are not just about reputation, they are about control. By damaging how others perceive you, the manipulator ensures that you have fewer resources, less support, and less credibility. It is a psychological attack designed to weaken you from the inside out. The worst part is that the manipulator often plays the victim so convincingly that even those who once trusted you begin to question whether you are the problem. Sudden niceness is one of the most deceptive tactics used by manipulative individuals when they realize they are losing control over someone. After engaging in gaslighting, playing the victim, silent retaliation, or even a smear campaign, they may suddenly shift their behavior and act as if nothing happened. This is not a genuine act of kindness or remorse. It is a strategic move designed to regain influence over you. By appearing pleasant, apologetic, or overly accommodating, they create confusion, making you question whether their past behavior was as harmful as you originally believed. This tactic often follows a period of mistreatment. After days, weeks, or even months of conflict, withdrawal, or sabotage, they unexpectedly switch to being warm, charming, and considerate. They may compliment you, offer to help you with something, or even apologize in a vague, non-committal way. I know things have been tense, but I just want to move forward, they might say. However, they never truly acknowledge or take responsibility for their previous actions, and instead they try to rewrite history by acting as if nothing serious ever happened. One of the reasons sudden niceness is so effective is that it plays on the natural human desire for peace and resolution. After experiencing manipulation and mistreatment, people often feel exhausted and emotionally drained. When the manipulator suddenly becomes kind, it offers a sense of relief. You may begin to think, maybe I overreacted, or maybe things weren't as bad as I thought. This is exactly what they want. By shifting their behavior, they create doubt, making you second-guess your own experiences and instincts. Another aspect of this tactic is its unpredictability. Manipulative individuals know that if they were consistently cruel, it would be easier for people to recognize their toxicity and walk away. By mixing periods of hostility with sudden kindness, they create emotional instability. This intermittent reinforcement, alternating between negative and positive behavior, conditions you to seek their approval and avoid actions that might trigger another negative phase. Over time, this makes you more dependent on them, hoping that if you act a certain way, they will remain in their nice phase. Sudden niceness is also a way to test your boundaries. When they act kind after treating you poorly, they are watching to see if you will simply accept their behavior without addressing the past. If you welcome them back without holding them accountable, they take it as confirmation that they can mistreat you again in the future without consequences. They learn that all they need to do is temporarily switch to a friendly demeanor whenever they sense you pulling away. In some cases, this tactic is used to manipulate not just the direct target, but also those around them. If others witness their sudden kindness, they may believe the manipulator is a good person who is trying to make things right. This can make it even harder for the victim to call out the manipulative behavior, as outsiders may say, "They seem really nice now," or "Maybe you should just let it go." The manipulator carefully crafts this image to maintain their influence and avoid being held accountable. Ultimately, sudden niceness is not about genuine kindness or reconciliation. It is a calculated move to regain control. It creates confusion, weakens your resolve, and resets the cycle of manipulation. By appearing kind just long enough to draw you back in, they ensure that they can continue their toxic behavior without facing real consequences. Power moves are a manipulator's way of asserting control when they feel threatened or exposed. These tactics are designed to intimidate, pressure, and dominate others, ensuring that they maintain authority over a situation. When manipulative individuals sense that they are losing influence, they resort to aggressive strategies, whether through direct threats, psychological manipulation, or displays of dominance, to force submission. The goal is not resolution or fairness, but reinforcement of their control. One of the most common ways they exert power is through threats, either overt or subtle. A direct threat might sound like, "You'll regret this," or "I can make things very difficult for you." These statements are meant to create fear, making you reconsider standing up for yourself. More subtle threats might come in the form of veiled warnings. "People who cross me usually don't end up in a good place," or "I'd hate for something unfortunate to happen to your reputation." By keeping their threats ambiguous, they maintain plausible deniability while ensuring you feel the pressure of their unspoken consequences. Psychological manipulation is another power move often used to destabilize and weaken their target. They may use guilt, shame, or obligation to force compliance. If intimidation alone does not work, they shift to making you feel responsible for their emotions. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" Or, "You're really going to ruin our relationship over this?" These tactics are not about genuine emotional expression. They are designed to make you feel like you are the one causing harm, diverting attention away from their behavior. Another classic power move is using their authority, status, or influence as leverage. In the workplace, this could mean a superior threatening to damage your career or making it clear that your opportunities depend on your obedience. In personal relationships, it might involve controlling resources such as money or access to social circles, ensuring that you feel dependent on them. The underlying message is clear. They hold the power, and resisting them comes at a cost. Some manipulators take power moves a step further by deliberately embarrassing or undermining their target in public. They may call you out in a group setting, dismiss your ideas, or spread damaging rumors to weaken your credibility. Public humiliation is particularly effective because it not only hurts your confidence, but also shapes how others perceive you. If they can make you look incompetent, unreasonable, or unstable, they gain the upper hand without having to justify their action. A more passive yet equally damaging form of power play is withdrawal. When intimidation does not work, they may suddenly withhold communication, support, or affection, creating a void that forces you to come back to them on their terms. This silent treatment is not about needing space. It is about making you feel isolated and desperate for their approval. Over time, this imbalance reinforces their control, conditioning you to avoid actions that might trigger their withdrawal. In extreme cases, power moves can escalate to direct aggression, raising their voice, invading personal space, or using physical intimidation. Even without physical harm, the mere act of towering over someone, slamming objects, or making aggressive gestures can create an atmosphere of fear, discouraging resistance. The underlying intention is the same: to establish dominance and ensure that you submit to their control. At its core, every power move is about forcing submission. It is not about compromise, resolution, or fairness. It is about making you feel powerless, unsure, and hesitant to challenge them again. Testing boundaries is one of the most calculated tactics used by manipulative individuals. It is their way of assessing how much control they can exert over someone and how far they can push before facing resistance. When they realize that you are aware of their behavior or beginning to stand your ground, they do not always launch an outright attack. Instead, they carefully test your limits, looking for weaknesses, hesitation, or inconsistencies in your responses. Their goal is to see whether you will hold firm or eventually break down under pressure. This process often starts subtly. They may make a small, inappropriate comment to gauge your reaction. If you let it slide, they push further, increasing the intensity over time. It might be a joke at your expense, a request that slightly oversteps your comfort zone, or a dismissive remark about something important to you. The test is not just about what they say or do, it is about how you respond. If you seem unsure, hesitant, or unwilling to push back, they take it as a sign that they can continue to push further. Another way they test boundaries is by disregarding your personal space, time, or decisions. They may show up unannounced, call or message repeatedly even when you have asked for space, or pressure you into commitments that serve their interests rather than yours. If you resist, they might guilt trip you, saying things like, "I thought you cared about me," or "you used to be more supportive." These manipulative statements are designed to make you question whether your boundaries are even valid, slowly eroding your confidence in enforcing them. In some cases, they will deliberately violate a boundary you have set just to see if you will enforce it. For example, if you have made it clear that you do not want to discuss certain topics or be treated in a certain way, they might bring it up casually, pretending they forgot. If you remind them of your boundary, they may laugh it off or minimize it, saying, "Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive," or "I was just joking." This is not an accident, it is a test. They want to see if they can override your limits without consequences. If you let it go, they will continue to push, each time going a little further. Manipulative people also test boundaries by seeing how much emotional turmoil they can create before you break. They may provoke arguments, give you the silent treatment, or engage in passive-aggressive behavior to wear you down emotionally. If they can make you react emotionally, whether with frustration, guilt, or self-doubt, they gain the upper hand. Your reaction tells them what buttons to press in the future and how to manipulate your emotions to their advantage. Sometimes boundary testing happens in more strategic ways. They might create situations where they force you to compromise your values, making small demands that seem harmless but gradually increase in severity. They may ask for small favors, then bigger ones, making it harder to say no over time. By conditioning you to accept small boundary violations, they prepare you for larger ones in the future, ensuring that by the time you realize what is happening, you are already deeply entangled in their control. Ultimately, testing boundaries is about control. Manipulative individuals do not respect personal limits, they view them as obstacles to be broken down. Each time they push and you do not resist, they gain more influence. It is a calculated game of pressure and persistence designed to wear you down until you comply without even realizing it. Shifting the focus is a classic tactic used by manipulative individuals when they feel cornered or exposed. Instead of addressing the real issue, they create distractions, introduce new conflicts, or redirect attention elsewhere. The goal is simple: to make you forget what really matters, exhaust you emotionally, and avoid taking responsibility for their actions. This technique is highly effective because it preys on human nature. When multiple issues are thrown at you at once, it becomes difficult to stay focused on the original concern. One of the most common ways they shift the focus is by turning the conversation into a personal attack. If you confront them about their behavior, they immediately flip the narrative to make it about you. Instead of acknowledging their wrongdoing, they say things like, "Why are you always so negative?" or "You're overreacting again." By questioning your emotions, reactions, or character, they take the spotlight off their actions and place it onto you. The more you try to defend yourself, the further the conversation drifts away from the real issue. Another way they create distractions is by bringing up unrelated past conflicts. If you challenge them about something specific, they suddenly remind you of every mistake you have ever made. "Oh, so now you're perfect? What about that time you let me down?" Or, "You have no right to judge me after everything you've done." This tactic is meant to overwhelm you, making you feel guilty or hypocritical. Instead of holding them accountable, you end up explaining or justifying yourself, completely derailing the conversation. Manipulative people are also skilled at playing the victim as a way to shift focus. The moment they sense that they are losing control of the narrative, they exaggerate their own suffering. If you point out their lies, deceit, or harmful actions, they suddenly act as if they are the ones being attacked. "I can't believe you would say that to me after everything I've been through," or "You're making me feel horrible right now." Their goal is to make you feel like the aggressor, so that the attention shifts away from what they have done wrong. Another common technique is to introduce an entirely new problem. Just when you are about to get to the heart of the issue, they suddenly bring up a completely unrelated crisis. "We shouldn't be arguing about this when we have bigger problems to deal with," or "This is not the time for this conversation." They may even manufacture drama, picking a fight with someone else, creating workplace tension, or stirring up personal chaos, all to divert your focus. Before you know it, you are caught up in handling the new conflict and the original issue is forgotten. Sometimes they use humor or sarcasm to downplay the seriousness of the issue. If you confront them, they might laugh it off or mock you for taking things too seriously. "Wow, you really need to lighten up," or "You're acting like this is a big deal when it's not." By making you feel foolish for even bringing it up, they condition you to avoid challenging them in the future. The ultimate purpose of shifting the focus is to wear you down mentally and emotionally. When every confrontation turns into a maze of unrelated arguments, personal attacks, and emotional manipulation, you eventually become too exhausted to pursue the truth. It is a calculated distraction strategy designed to make you doubt yourself, lose sight of what really matters, and ultimately let them off the hook. Discrediting you is one of the most damaging tactics used by manipulative individuals when they know that you have seen through their deception. Instead of addressing the truth, they work to destroy your credibility, ensuring that no one believes you. The goal is not just to silence you, but to isolate you, making you appear unreliable, irrational, or even mentally unstable. By doing this, they weaken your influence and ensure that if you ever speak out against them, others will dismiss your words before even considering them. One of the most common ways they discredit you is by subtly planting seeds of doubt in the minds of those around you. They may start making offhand comments like, "I think they're going through something," or "They've been acting a little off lately." These remarks seem innocent at first, but over time they shape how others perceive you. Suddenly, people start second-guessing your words, questioning your behavior, and assuming that your concerns are exaggerated or misguided. Another powerful method they use is exaggeration and misrepresentation. They take something you said or did and twist it into something far more extreme. If you express frustration, they portray you as aggressive. If you were emotional about something, they label you as unstable. If you made a mistake, they magnify it to make it seem like a pattern of recklessness. By distorting reality just enough to create doubt, they frame you as unreliable and difficult to trust. Social influence plays a huge role in their strategy. If they can turn others against you, they don't have to defend themselves. The people around you will do it for them. They strategically spread misinformation, painting themselves as the reasonable one and you as the problem. They might tell mutual friends or colleagues, I don't know what's going on with them, but they've been really difficult lately. These subtle jabs create a perception that you are irrational, overly sensitive, or even dishonest. The more people believe this, the harder it becomes for you to tell your side of the story. Another way they discredit you is by forcing you into emotional reactions and then using those reactions against you. They might provoke you, gaslight you, or push your buttons until you finally snap. Then they step back and say, see, look how unstable they are. By creating a situation where you react emotionally, they give others proof that you are the problem. Meanwhile, their own manipulative behavior remains hidden. Sometimes they go even further and create outright lies about you. They might accuse you of being dishonest, manipulative, or untrustworthy, ironically projecting their own behaviors onto you. This is especially damaging in professional environments or close social circles where your reputation matters. If enough people hear these lies, they begin to take on a life of their own, making it nearly impossible for you to defend yourself. The most insidious part of this tactic is that it can make you start doubting yourself. When everyone around you starts treating you differently, when your words are met with skepticism, and when your character is constantly questioned, it's easy to feel like you are losing your grip on reality. This self-doubt can make you withdraw, stop defending yourself, and ultimately give in to the manipulator's control. By discrediting you, they ensure that the truth loses its power before it can even be heard. It is a calculated move to silence you, isolate you, and maintain their dominance while making you feel powerless. When manipulative and toxic individuals realize that you see through their deception, they do not admit fault or change their ways. Instead, they shift into defensive and offensive strategies designed to confuse, weaken, and control you. Whether through gaslighting, playing the victim, silent retaliation, smear campaigns, sudden niceness, power moves, boundary testing, distraction, or discrediting, their goal is the same: to maintain their influence while making you doubt yourself. Understanding these tactics is the first step in protecting yourself. When you recognize these behaviors for what they are, you take away their power. You stop questioning your own reality, you stop reacting in ways that give them control, and you start standing firm in your truth. The key is to remain grounded, refuse to engage in their manipulations, and set firm boundaries that cannot be broken. At the end of the day, the strength to overcome their influence comes from within. You do not need to prove yourself to those who are determined to misunderstand you, nor do you need to fight battles with people who thrive on deception. By staying focused on your truth and surrounding yourself with people who value honesty and respect, you take away their greatest weapon, your emotional reaction. True power comes not from controlling others, but from controlling yourself.